they'd walk in and I'd say, hey, Scott, it's very nice to meet you. Thanks so much for your time. I'm Russ. I do blah, blah, blah. And I'd still have that pillow either under my arm or sitting next to me. And they're like, what's that thing? I go, oh, this? Oh, well, this is our new pillow. It does all these great things. Here, feel it. And that whole kind of thing. If you touch it, you buy it. Sold a ton of those pillows.
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 52 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snellings Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. Today, I'm joined in the studio by Russ Burch. Russ is a seasoned professional in sales and has been a commercial banker for the last 19 years. He currently has the longest title I've ever seen, as he is a senior vice president of commercial banking and community leader for Plano at Frost Bank. Did I get that right?
You got it all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
In addition to sales, he is a Dale Carnegie certified senior trainer where he teaches Carnegie methods that facilitate personal and professional development. Russ also serves his community as a board member for the Plano Chamber of Commerce. Russ, welcome to the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Scott, thanks so much for the opportunity. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming down. You and I met basically through networking.
Exactly, yeah.
Provisors. If you guys are professionals out there and looking for a great networking group, Provisors is fantastic, has been for me. So let's start off. Give us a little bit of background. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Wow. Okay. Where do we start? So I grew up in Colorado, just outside of Denver in Aurora, Colorado. Grew up there, went to high school, went to college, got married, moved out 2 weeks after our second daughter was born to South Dakota, to a place we had never been. So loaded up the truck and moved across there. Lived in South Dakota for about 5.5 years, and then came down to Texas to a place we had never been back in 2000, just for job, reasons and family. And we've been here ever since, 24 years.
Man, so going from, even though you were in Colorado, I would imagine going up to South Dakota was still a pretty massive shock to the system. A little bit. Yeah. We first moved to Sioux Falls, which is east side of the state, really kind of borders Minnesota. It's a different kind of weather and it's a different kind of winter. Ooh. So we were there 2 years. Yeah. And then let's go back to go over to Rapid City. Same climate as Denver. It was great. Welcoming, warm, community, very, transient because of hospitality. Really enjoyed Rapid City. Beautiful place. And I'm assuming they probably don't have triple digit summers like we have here in Texas. So you had to go decide, hey, let's go see what that's like.
90 was really hot in Rapid City. And so right. Let's go to Dallas. It can't be that bad. When we moved here the year in 2000, I think there were 50 some odd straight days over 100. Yeah. And we moved in June. My wife's like, where did we go? Why are we here?
Why is Dallas on fire?
Yeah. But we did learn about Brahms ice cream.
There you go.
And so that was good and bad for the first couple of months of living in Texas.
Yeah. If you're in Texas, you know about Brahms ice cream, you know about swimming pools in the summertime. There's no way around those two things. All right. So take us back a little bit to college. What were you interested in pursuing back then?
I think like most people, I had no idea. I knew I wanted to be working with people. I had been working for a hotel. I was a bellman. I was a doorman, carrying bags and greeting people. And the hotel I was at, a lot of the guests were traveling sales folks. And had made some great relationships and talked to a bunch of people. I'm like, well, that seems like a cool gig. Let's try that. And so I went to the hotel. I'm like, I want to be the next, sales guy. And the guy's like, I don't know if you've got the skill set to do this. And I'm like, I think I do. And so I left, got a job in a hospitality furnishings company doing inside sales, selling sheets, towels, pillows over the phone. Did well at that, got my own territory. But in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And just try to figure out, I can't be a professional baseball player. That dream sailed.
Right.
So let's go talk to people for a living. And the more and more I talk to people, I realize there's always stories and just the relationships you build, regardless of what you're selling, is that if you can help somebody with advice, with a product, with a solution, whatever it is, that's pretty satisfying.
And so sales is universal. right?
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if you're employed or unemployed. You're selling yourself. You're selling something at some point in time.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so for you, it doesn't sound like you had any sales training in college.
Nope.
For this first job, did they provide you with any sales training or just basically figure it out?
Figure it out.
All right. So how did you go about doing that? You have this job. I assume there's probably at least some commission component to it.
Straight commission.
Right. And you like to eat, I assume.
Yeah, my wife is pretty picky about that. You know, feed the kids and have a meal every day, but it's okay.
All right. So what's the mindset going into this job of, okay, now I'm in sales and it is straight commission, so I got to go sell stuff. How did you go about figuring out how to do that?
Kind of started research 101. I'm like, okay, who are all the great salespeople or coaches or leaders? And one name rose above them all was Zig Ziglar. You know, Zig used to have an office, but they still do have an office here in Dallas.
Yep.
I listened to every single book Zig had ever written, and that was my sales training. And so as I'm driving across Nebraska and the Dakotas, I'm listening to Zig, and that was it. And Zig is such a great, I thought was such a great mentor. It's because it's all about not the product or yourself. It's all about the other person. You know, Zig would say, he was like, let me get on your side of the table. Let me help you make this decision. He was never selling. He was just helping people make decisions. So that started it, and kind of then fell into a love or a slow love on, I need to learn more about this. And this is a cool profession. This is pretty cool. I need to be better. And so reading as many books as I possibly could.
It's amazing too, because a lot of these companies provide sales training, and a lot of them couldn't be further from each other, right? Like, hey, you got to do it this way. Here's how you push the product. Here's how you do this, that, or the other. And there's no like straight consensus on, no, this is the way to sell. And so the problem that, from my perspective is, go on LinkedIn, right? Lots of people trying to sell themselves on LinkedIn, especially through the direct messages. And it just comes across so hot. Hi, I'm so-and-so. Here's what I do for a living. Would love to meet you and show you how great we are.
Yeah.
Right. That's how a lot of sales is approached.
Yep.
As opposed to, hey, I'm so-and-so. What can I do to help you out? What value can I provide you?
Yeah.
Hey, you probably have these kinds of problems. Let's talk. Right. And so whenever you kind of went through your sales training and started doing all your research outside of Zig, what other approaches did you see that maybe you tried and just failed miserably at, or just it didn't make sense in your brain?
Yeah, so many different things. And I wish it was so easy as just like, hey, you've got issues, let's just chat about it. And so not to disparage any sales trainers that are out there, this is a tough job.
Yeah.
One of the other things that really kind of helped me in understanding what sales was, I cannot remember the author, but the book called The Psychology of Selling. But also just psychology books of just understanding people. Why do people think the way they do? What's important to them? And at the end of the day, that's the only thing that really matters in sales. You may have the coolest widget, the best mousetrap, whatever. But if they don't care about it, they don't like you, it makes no difference. So it's been interesting to kind of dig into that people and just kind of learning and understanding, what do they do? Why do they do it? And how do they do it? And can I help?
Yeah, there's a fantastic book out there by Robert Cialdini. I don't know if you've read it or not. It's called Influence.
Okay.
And it talks about a lot of those kind of decision points that people go through and different, almost primitive things that we all have within us, right? Like a feeling of reciprocity. Somebody does me a favor, then I feel like I owe them one, right? That's one of the reasons why when we go into trial, one of the very first things the judge reads is instructions to the jurors. And they say, hey, don't accept anything from any of the attorneys or the parties. Like, don't even let them buy you a Coke or anything like that. Yeah. And it's addressing that very thing, right? There's this feeling of reciprocity. If someone gives us something, that we got to give it back.
Yeah.
And so how did you continue to train up in sales? Obviously, there's the experiential factor, right? You had to go sell, so you tried out a whole bunch of different stuff.
Try, learn, fail, try again. Yep.
Exactly. And so you read all the Zig Ziglar books. You read several other books. What else were you doing during that time frame?
It was really talking to other people, finding those either within the same company or other industries that were just, as I thought, just killing it, just doing a great job, and asking questions. What do you do? Why do you do it? How do you do it this way? What works for you? I'm a big believer that we've all got amazing information in our heads. And if we help each other, if we're sharing information, we're not taking anything from each other. Whether it's, we maybe have going after the exact same client in the same industry, but if we help each other, we're not hurting each other. So it's how do we just help each other get better? And so just, again, reading books, asking questions, trying things out, see what works, what doesn't work. I would try all different kinds of cold calls, walking in, completely, unannounced. I used to carry a pillow under my arm, walking into a hotel, asking for the owner of the hotel. Yeah. It worked.
I bet. The hardest part is getting access, right?
And they'd walk in and I'd say, hey, Scott, it's very nice to meet you. Thanks so much for your time. I'm Russ. I do blah, blah, blah. And I'd still have that pillow either under my arm or sitting next to me. And they're like, what's that thing? I go, oh, this? Oh, well, this is our new pillow. It does all these great things. Here, feel it. And that whole kind of thing. If you touch it, you buy it. Sold a ton of those pillows. And so that kind of led me down the road of going, okay, it's not how much I know about necessarily that product and why I think it's so great. Why do you think it's great? Do you like it? Does this feel good? Does this solve a problem if you're in a hotel that you got lousy pillows? Well, it solves a problem.
A big problem.
A big problem. Now, as a banker, we don't get to bring money and say, how does this feel? What do you think of that? That would be a great, easy way to walk into the door. But
you would get in front of anybody and everybody you ever wanted to get in front of.
So maybe I'll take that. Anyway, but just, again, trying to understand, what are you dealing with? Most businesses have a lot of the same types of issues they go on with. It could be employees, it could be cash flow, it could be training, it could be growth, all of the different things. It's almost universal, but there are nuances to each kind of industry. And so being able to understand that and having those conversations, say, other companies like you are dealing with this. How do you deal with that? As opposed to, I sell XYZ, and if you buy this, you'll be better off.
That's really interesting because as a commercial banker, you get behind the curtains on all kinds of companies. You get to see their financials. You get to ask those questions. What are the biggest pain points that you see for small, medium, and then large companies that you deal with?
Biggest one's cash flow.
Yep.
How do I keep the cash churning? How do you slow down payables but speed up receivables is always a big thing. And just, you got to keep the lights on. If you've got employees you pay weekly, how do you do that if you're not getting paid for 45, 60, 75 days down the road? That's a big, big pain point. How do you grow your business if you're waiting for that next check to come in before you can do the next job? Those are issues. And so having the conversations of, well, why is this going on? What have you tried? What's worked? What hasn't worked? Have you thought about X, Y, Z? And oftentimes it does lead to a credit conversation, that perhaps some lending may help this out. It's not always the right answer for everything. Sometimes it's more of an anchor than a lifeline, depending on the company and the issues. But having those conversations, and the thing about money is that everybody wants what I sell. I sell a lot of money, which is great, but not everybody can qualify. And I think the biggest advantage is being able to say no fast. Is that, hey, we've looked at everything, we've kind of peeked behind the curtain. This doesn't work right now, but here's why. I think there's value in that, and having a genuine conversation. It's like, hey, Scott, here's where you're at. I know you want to go to here, but if you do these things the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever, you've got a better shot to get here. And that's where I think there's true value in having just relationship. That's understanding where people are coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if they do make those changes or they just continue to grow and get better, then there's your future client right there. Yeah. And you've already provided a whole bunch of value essentially as a business coach, right? From the banking perspective.
Exactly,
anyway. Yeah. And so, it's funny that you bring up cash flow. When I first started, when I first left the defense side and started at the plaintiff side, the cash flow thing, we didn't really think about it that much. We knew what we were doing. Yeah. We had some cases and things like that. But on the plaintiff side, we get paid when the case resolves. If it resolves favorably. If it doesn't resolve favorably, we don't get anything, right? We're out our time and our money that we've invested in it. And, so close times could be anywhere from, if it's a super quick close, 6 months. Yeah. If it's, an average one, 9 to 12 months. And if it goes into litigation, who knows? Yeah. Right. It could be a couple of years. It could be longer than that. And if it's appealed, I'm just saying the cash flow aspect is real. That's the cash flow monster. You ask any plaintiff attorney, PI attorney about one of their bigger problems, and they're going to bring up cash flow. Yeah, and so
definitely,
it's I don't think it's industry dependent for sure.
It's not. Yeah, I was going to say, ask any business owner. It's there. It's real.
So as a commercial banker, what else are you looking at other than cash flow and the financials to where the companies who are doing these specific things really well are just skyrocketing, and the companies who maybe aren't doing a couple of those things so well aren't. They're stuck or they're even regressing.
There's a number of factors. A lot of it is knowing the details. Really, the business owners that are really kind of in the weeds, but with partners. Understanding that, it's easy as a business owner to get sucked down that chief cook and bottle washer where you wear every hat. The problem with that is that you're not great at everything. You're a great visionary or strategic thinker and you understand how to do the things, but you may not be great at accounting or bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Or you may not know marketing, which isn't a knock on you. It's just maybe not in your skill set. So understanding where you can bring in the right experts, the right team to help you with that. Those are typically the companies that are doing the best because they're relying on the experts to help them.
Yeah, the whole delegation of the things, starting with the thing that you stink the most at or that's taken the most time on your plate that you're not any good at is so huge. We're an EOS firm, entrepreneurial operating systems, Wickman's Traction.
Yep, great stuff.
We have an implementer. In fact, I'm going to go have lunch with him after this podcast. Nice. But that has been a game changer for us because it's provided us with that system. And one of the things that we do each quarter is delegate and elevate. Like what is on our plates that we don't need to be doing because either we're not that good at it or our value, we're not bringing enough value while we do it.
Makes sense,
right?
Yeah. Talk about big rocks, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Your 90-day rocks as well. Okay, so I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, which is what we call the abundance mindset.
Yeah.
Collaboration is huge. Just because I collaborate with you on something doesn't mean that you're stealing my clients because there's way more clients out there.
Yeah.
Right. I'm huge into that. We have mastermind groups. We collaborate even, within our own city with other attorneys. Because I'm a big believer that, for instance, in what we do, our biggest competitor is people who don't hire lawyers.
Yeah.
And so, how do we reach them? How do we show them the value that we bring? And, even on larger cases, in fact, I posted on LinkedIn about this. I think one of the reasons that I'm so proud of our team for how we handle the larger cases is we're not afraid to collaborate, right? If there's an aspect of the case that we know another firm handles really, really well, we're going to go reach out and be like, hey, you guys want to jump on? And it cuts our fee, but so what? We're gonna have a better result for the client at the end of the day.
You've made allies.
We've made allies, absolutely. And you know what? One of those firms, maybe on down the road, maybe they might have us jump in on the things that we do really well. Yeah. So I think that abundance mindset is so huge. And with the successful business owners that you're talking with, are you seeing the same thing, or are you still seeing kind of that mindset of big time competition?
I mean, competition's always there. We all have every level of competition is out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot to do what you do. There's 270 banks in Dallas, and there's a lot of people that do what we do. Mm-hmm. The business owners that understand, hey, they've got the connections. So let's say they're a commercial general contractor, construction. They know 6 or 7 other or 10 other commercial GCs that they'll refer business out to because it's either not in their wheelhouse, they don't have time, they've got a big backlog. Hey, my buddy over here, let him do that for you, or bring them in. Those that truly understand that if they're giving, they get way more back from that.
Yeah. And you just mentioned a huge word there, connections.
Yeah.
So you're a big networking guy. You have a bunch of connections. I mean, it's in your job title, the 15-word job title.
Community leader, kind of know everybody in the community.
Yeah. Community leader of Plano for Frost Bank. Tell me how you go about creating connections that are authentic, that are sustainable, and how do you organize your strategy in doing that, or do you? Kinda.
Is that a good enough answer?
It's like a lawyer. Well, it depends.
It depends. Yeah. But I am very strategic. So it took me a long time to get, I think, really good at understanding connections, centers of influence, and how you do all those kind of things. Because I wasn't good at it when I was younger, and I didn't understand the value of it. So now when I say, okay, who do I need to know in town? I've always said I want to be a guy that knows a guy, because there's value in that.
Oh, huge value.
Even if you call me and say, hey, I got a question. You know a glass guy? Yeah. Well, that doesn't help me, but I've helped you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take anything away from me. So there's value in being a guy that knows a guy. So understanding who do I need to know, or at least trying to understand who do I need to know for my clients. So I think of, okay, business owners need to know attorneys, accountants, bookkeepers, investment guys, bankers, whomever.
Right.
That's kind of the core team. But also then understanding what do they do specifically. Oh, okay, so you're a big, let's say you run a large landscape company. You may need access to the equipment sales. Or maybe there's an equipment finance company that does that specifically that could be a good benefit for you. Or maybe you need access to a good HR person that does recruiting. You got to figure it out. And you talk about being genuine. I expect nothing from every single one of my referral sources. Absolutely expect nothing. Because I know I'll never be let down.
Fair. Yeah.
So,
they're not going to let you down there.
But it goes back to what you said earlier about reciprocity, is that if I help enough other people get what they want, then I can get what I want, which is a butchered quote from Zig Ziglar. But basically that's kind of, you can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want.
Yep. I think you nailed it there.
I
think
got
that's
that
pretty
one.
close.
Pull
That's
that one
pretty
back.
close.
Yeah.
It's also the main premise of the Go Giver book.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is it's a fantastic book for those of you who haven't read that. I definitely suggest it. It's super short. It's a fable. So definitely pick that up.
Yeah.
So in terms of your strategy, it sounds like what you're doing is you're saying, okay, here's my client base. Here's the people who I actually make money from, who take loans or who I sell money to.
Yep.
How can I best benefit them? Obviously, I can sell them money, but in what other aspects of their business can I help them, or even their personal life or whatever? And you strategically make those connections. Let's say that you have business A over here, and you know that the owner of business A would have potentially a need for these different connections, and you want to go try to make those connections so you can introduce business owner A to them. How do you reach out? How do you go about making those new relationships?
I like to sit down. I'm old school. I want to sit down and meet you face to face. I want to shake your hand. I want to have a cup of coffee. Do we like each other? You may be the expert in what you do, but if we don't get along, that's not a good fit for either of us. It's definitely not a good fit for the client.
Right.
So are we on the same page from a mindset of giving first? That's a big, big thing for me, is that if you're just looking to make a sale, we're probably not going to get along real well. But how do we just make sure that we're in sync? Kind of know, like, and trust. We talk provisors. That's a big deal. So I want to look in the eye. I want to shake your hand, figure out what you do, why you do it as that referral partner or that other company, so that I can confidently go to my client and say, I know somebody. Hey, I was talking to Mary over here. She's a phenomenal expert in this. Can I connect you? And then I'll make an email introduction to the two of them. So I copy both of them on there. Scott meet Mary. A little blurb about you. Mary meets Scott. I'll let you guys take it from here. If I can help or buy lunch, give me a shout. You can put good people together. And it comes down to asking great questions of my clients. What are they dealing with? I'm not a big fan of the what keeps you up at night question. That's been used for way too many decades.
Right.
But just understanding, what are you dealing with? Hey, you talked about you wanted to grow your business next year. What's getting in your way?
Yeah.
We're having some issues with employment. I get it. A lot of companies are having issues finding good quality talent and retaining talent. So having those conversations about, well, how are you retaining talent? What are you doing for your high performers? What are you doing for your middle performers? And so,
how are you getting rid of your low performers?
How are you getting, are you managing and holding people accountable? And sometimes businesses can be, and just all of us are so desperate, we need warm bodies in because I'm so busy.
Yeah.
That's not always a good thing. So it's just, again, understanding, asking questions, going, I might know somebody, or I might know some programs that could potentially help you. So it's just truly trying to be a friend and be somebody who really cares about them, more than I'm really worried about, hey, what am I going to get out of this conversation?
So here's something that I struggle with, and I want to see how you handle it. We meet a ton of people and really hit it off with a ton of people. There's some amazing people in Frisco and in Plano and just, in every bigger city and smaller city as well. You're going to have a bunch of new connections if you're out there really trying to do what you're talking about.
Yep.
How do you manage that? How do you stay in front of them? How do you keep track of who you've reached out to and when it's time to follow up and just check in on them? Because I think that is the biggest hindrance to really growing your network is just letting those relationships kind of wither away, not intentionally, but you can't keep them all up here.
You can't, yeah.
So you got to have some sort of a system to reach out on some basis to just check in. Hey, Mary, how's it going? We met a while back. Did anything ever happen between you and business owner A? If not, I got another person maybe that I can introduce you to.
Yeah. There's this really great tool out there. It's been out just a little bit. It's called Excel, if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
As much as
I'm terrible with the formula part of it, but I'm pretty familiar with Excel.
If I could learn pivot tables, my life would be solved. But as simple as it sounds, I use Excel. One of the tools I use is Excel. I'm capturing everybody's name, phone number, email address, and then I'm picking out some blurbs from the conversation that we had about what do they do, what do they like, what might be important, do they play golf, those kind of things. And so I routinely look at that every single month and say, okay, when was the last time I reached out to Steve or Mary or Bob or whatever, and send a handwritten note. I was thinking about you. How are things going with the kids? How was that vacation you went to? Because I listened. That's being intentional about the follow-up and how you follow up, life-changing. Because then people know, you really care about that. Old school, like a handwritten note. That's a cool thing to send out still.
Yeah.
So often I think we get so busy just being busy that, hey, Scott, just called to check in. How are things? Which sounds like, hey, Scott, you got any referrals for me?
Right.
And no.
Yeah.
So it's got to be very intentional, but you got to ask really good, deep questions to understand those people. I feel like a knucklehead for just learning this, but lists on your iPhone, you can create a bunch of different categories in your contact list.
Okay.
And so you've got all your contacts in your iPhone, but now you create these lists and move those contacts into lists. So, you need a financial advisor? Click, here's 10.
Yeah, well, I'm just learning that myself right now.
It's a cool tool,
Russ.
yeah.
I'll have to look into that. I need to go through and get rid of all of the duplicate entries in my contacts.
Did that last weekend.
It's insane. And I've had a couple of apps that said they did it, and all they did was screw up the phone numbers. There's actually several other apps out right now. One I'm trying is Clay. And basically it pulls your email, your phone, all that stuff, and figures out who you're interacting with the most and assigns them kind of different levels.
Okay.
And then go through and try to put them into different groups, kind of like what you're talking about, different lists, and make sure that I'm reaching out to people. And it's helpful because, like you said, you're just not going to remember to do it. And the follow-up is key.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many people I meet at networking events or something, and we really hit it off. And if I don't end up with a card or contact information, that's just a wasted evening.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Really
I had a good time. I met somebody really cool, but I try to look them up on LinkedIn right then. If they don't have a card and connect that way, that's a pretty easy way because most people are on LinkedIn. Or I give them my card and hope that they'll email me or call.
I think hope's not a strategy.
No, hope is a terrible strategy.
strategy.
Hope is a terrible strategy. But yeah, I think there's several different things you can do, but the main part is being strategic and being intentional.
Yeah.
And especially with the follow-up part.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So let's get into Dale Carnegie.
Sounds good.
How did you end up, finding Dale Carnegie and being interested in that?
Sure. It's interesting. I read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People 25 some odd years ago.
Many people's top recommended book.
Absolutely. And at that time in my life, I got nothing out of it. Didn't know how to apply it. Didn't really resonate with me. I'm like, okay, check it off the list. I read a development book, but didn't really resonate.
Yeah.
At a prior bank I was working at, one of my responsibilities was sales training. And so I started training all of the business bankers across the country. So I was in Dallas and New York every other month.
And you just gave them Zig Ziglar's books, right? Said, go read these.
Not exactly. They had good content. So I was teaching the bank's content based off a lot of the stuff that had come before. And I fell in love with it. I really enjoyed being in front of the room, which wasn't a surprise because as a sales guy, you're always in front of the room. And so that was kind of a natural fit. But didn't really know what else to do. Just, this is kind of a cool part of my job. And one day my oldest daughter calls me, and she was working for a car dealership in San Antonio. And she was going through this Dale Carnegie program. And she calls me and she's like, Dad, you've got to go do this. This is you. And I go, great. I've never heard of it. Didn't know they did programs. Didn't know they did, coaching and facilitation live. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll look into it. And just didn't follow up. Did the day job and just kind of kept going along. And then career transition a little bit. I found myself coming out of leadership, going back into production, and realized I don't have any connections.
Whoops.
Yeah, I better go figure that out. So I got invited to a goal setting breakfast one morning, and it was put on by the local Dale Carnegie franchise. And I was blown away. The guy was energetic. He was enthusiastic. He was a dynamic speaker. I'm like, I need me some of that. That was great. So I go up to him after the breakfast. I said, let's go have coffee the next day. So we go out for coffee the next day. I'm like, how do I do that? I said, but I can't do it full time. I said, part-time. I've got a fantastic day job and I want to keep doing that for a very, very long time. But can I do this on the side? And we use what's called avocational trainers all the time. Professionals in their industry that have got years of experience that can take those real world examples and tie it into the Carnegie principles and help teach that. I'm like, all right, sign me up. So I took the program, amazing, got a ton out of it, started, taking the training. It's normally about an 18-month process, and they go, we need trainers pretty quick. Can we fast track you? I'm like, sure. What does that mean? 4 months.
That means you're gonna be busy.
So they crammed, 18 months worth of training in 4 months, kind of into my life. It was kind of 24/7 at the time. But the coolest benefit of that has been the change. When you immerse yourself into anything, that heavily, it does have a change in who you are and what you do. And so I really kind of started liking the principles and like, this stuff kind of makes sense. And now rereading the book multiple times going, I get where he was coming from. Carnegie talks about all these human relations principles. They're common sense, just not commonly practiced. And, remembering someone's name, smiling, trying to see the other person's perspective. This is nothing new. This isn't rocket science.
Right.
And these are ideals that we've had for generations, going all the way back. Carnegie was a big researcher. So he did a lot of research, going all the way back to the Bible and just pulling this stuff out to say, here's how you can win friends and influence people. And I'm like, okay, I like this. And so we got certified. I'm like, let me just do this in the evening. We do evening classes after the day job. I'm like, let's see if I enjoy this. And I've fallen in love with it. It's that extra piece for me, both personally and professionally, that just kind of feeds the soul a little bit to get a little spiritual or metaphysical on you. It's just because it's at the end of the day, it's not about me. I get the opportunity to facilitate with a group of 18 to 35 people these ideas, topics, and strategies that changed my life. And so working with these folks over 8 weeks, it's an 8-week program, once a week, and seeing how their lives change professionally. That's good stuff. And just that's the passion behind it, is being able to be kind of that tool, if you will, just to facilitate and just kind of spread good news, good ideas, and that people can benefit from. So
that's really cool. Yeah, so many people just don't have something they're passionate about in their life.
Yeah.
And to have something, especially something that fulfills you and helps you improve and improves others. I mean, you're hitting the trifecta there.
It is completely selfish. It makes me a better banker, which makes being a banker incredibly passionate, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm helping people. Different solution, but I'm helping people.
Yeah.
So
give me a 30,000 foot overview of the program. If I signed up tomorrow, what am I going to learn? What does the program look like? And over those 8 weeks.
Gotcha. The 5 main things the program goes over are they call the pillars for success. And it's people skills, communication skills, leadership skills, enhancing self-confidence, and reducing stress and worry. That's the 5 main tenets of what the entire program is about. And it's 8 weeks. It's 3.5 hours once a week at night. And it really takes you from the beginning of the book all the way through the end of the book of how to win friends and influence people. Plus, how to stop worrying and start living. Another one of Carnegie's books, From Stress and Worry, because
that's not an issue these days. Stress, anxiety,
nothing weird has happened in the last 4 or 5 years in this world, has it? If we're stressed at home, our work suffers. If we're stressed at work, our home suffers. So how do we reduce stress and anxiety? We're not going to make it go away. You can't do that. But how do we better equip ourselves with some tools and some skills just to be better at managing it, dealing with it? So 30,000 foot view, you come in, oftentimes you're voluntold by your company because you're a high performer, like, hey, you're going to go through this thing.
Yep.
And you come in not knowing what to expect, which is good. That's intentional. We talked about intentionality earlier. This is a very intentional program. And so you come in not truly knowing what to expect, and each session builds upon each other. We want to break people out of their comfort zone slowly, because you can't just go from here to here. People freak out. That's way too much.
You can totally take them out of their comfort zone immediately.
You can. They won't come back the next week.
Right.
So you do that methodically. But we start with simple stuff. How do you remember names better? Is that important? Thinking about it from a workplace standpoint, what's the benefit of knowing some and remembering names? We network a lot. Is there a benefit to that when you remember somebody's name? Absolutely. Carnegie says the sweetest and most important sound in any language is a person's name. It matters. So 30,000 foot view, work on your communication skills. How do we present better in front of others? We're all selling, like you said earlier, and we may be in a position in our companies where we don't sell a product, but we're selling our ideas. We're selling ourselves. We're selling to our colleagues and coworkers on how to do things different, better, faster, whatever that is. So how do we communicate better with our peers at work? How do we communicate better at home? How do we lead? It's an interesting thing. Sometimes people think that you need to be a manager to be a leader, and that's completely the opposite.
For sure.
Leaders don't have to manage people. Managers manage processes. Leaders can inspire and motivate. And that's the cool piece is how do you give someone some leadership skills? And what does that look like? That makes a huge impact. And if you're not managing people, you still can manage up, you can manage down, you can be seen as a leader, someone that's inspirational. And would that help your career? Probably.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Could we be better leaders in our families, our communities? Yeah, probably could be. So we give you the tools to work through that. So people skills, communication, leadership skills, self-confidence. We can do everything better in life if we have a little bit more self-confidence. And there's a fine line, and it took me a long time to learn this, that between really confident and really cocky.
Yep.
Good self-confidence is great. Being cocky is not so great. And I was this guy for a very long time. But just realizing it's okay to be confident in what we do. You just don't have to be arrogant about it.
Yeah.
And, when people see you as confident, they're more likely to trust you. They're more likely to listen to you. So your communication skills will go up. Your people skills will go up because they trust you. You're more likely to get your ideas across better. So your leadership skills go up because you believe in what you do or what you stand for, your idea. Doesn't mean you're always right, but you believe in what you're doing.
One of our core values at Snellings Law is humble confidence.
Yeah.
And that is being confident in what you know. And when you don't know it, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of my favorite ones that we've identified in our office, because I feel like it's really accurate.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not an aspirational value. This is something that our team does really, really well.
Yeah.
And I love every time I see them owning, their knowledge base, and then, what they need to learn.
Humility is a strength. I believe humility is absolute strength.
100%.
Yeah. To go back to kind of what the program looks like, the first couple of sessions you get into it, it's the people skills. The first 9 principles for Dale Carnegie, and there's 30 of them, are how to be a more likable person. Yeah. Pretty straightforward. How to be a more likable person. Everybody
could be more likable.
Yes.
Right. Some more than others.
But how do we get people to like us? One of the quotes, and I love quotes. Sometimes I kind of get them mixed up, but Carnegie says that you can make more friends in 2 months by being genuinely interested in them than you can in 2 years by trying to make them interested in you.
Yeah.
So to be a more likable person, how to win friends is be a nice guy, be a nice woman.
Be curious about other people.
Absolutely. Ask great questions. So you kind of start off with that. How do we upskill ourselves? Then you go into how do you gain willing cooperation? Because there's a big difference between cooperation and coercion, especially in the workforce.
Yeah.
As sometimes as new leaders or emerging leaders, it's do this because we said so. But if your people don't know the why behind it, or if you don't know what makes your people tick, the results may vary.
Yeah.
And so it becomes very challenging. So as leaders within our communities, families, and jobs, how do we get willing cooperation? We've got to be on the same page there. So it's taking that kind of personal skill, take that up one level. And the last part of that is how do we lead? How do we lead and inspire? And what does that look like? And one of the coolest principles I take away from that is if you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Because people don't want to hear the story. Hey, we made a mistake. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Own it.
Extreme ownership.
Yeah, exactly.
Another core value.
Yeah. Take some ownership. Admit when you're wrong. People will trust you. They may not do business with you anymore if you made a big mistake, but they'll respect you for it. And that matters. One of the cool things about the program is the very last session we talk about as one of the cool things. There's a lot of cool things, but the very last session, everyone gets an opportunity to talk about what's been their biggest takeaway, their biggest aha moment. How are they different now outside of the training room than they were 8 weeks ago? And for me, it was humility. I went in kind of cocky, like
I got this. I don't need this training.
I've been training sales guys for years. I got this. Learned a lot. And I had the opportunity at the time that my middle daughter presented me with my certificate of graduation. And she goes, "You're a different person."
Wow.
Wow. Okay. And so I try every day to be as humble as possible. That's been my biggest takeaway. That's really kind of changed my perspective on life in a lot of different ways.
So tell me about the living with less anxiety and worry. What's kind of the general gist of that?
Well, Dale Carnegie's got 30 principles around that. So pick one that works for you.
He loves to have a lot of principles.
He's got a lot of principles, yeah, but they're tactical and they're intentional. Right. That's the big thing about the Dale Carnegie program is that you come in. It's not a lecture. You're not going to hear, myself or another trainer talk at you for 3.5 hours. Right. It's interactive and you do things, and then each week you've got to take something away to go do that. And one of the weeks is on, or actually we work on it for 2 weeks, stress and worry. So out of these principles, one of them is live in day-tight compartments. What does that mean? Well, don't do everything at once. Clear your desk of everything, put one piece of paper in front of you, work on that. We all think we can be great multitaskers.
No.
We're not. None of us are good at it.
No.
And studies are showing now that everything is worse when we try to do that.
Yep.
So when we focus on one thing, we can give our full deep work into it. We're not worried about the 9 other things that are going to fall apart. We're here. Put that in the box. You're done. Checking a box feels good. So that's that kind of reward
immediate
system.
dopamine.
Yeah, immediate dopamine's great. So living in day-tight compartments can be a big one. When I was a kid, I had zero self-confidence. I would walk, my shoulders were slunched over. I had zero self-confidence, and there are lots of reasons for that. And one of the things I used to worry about was the world's, the sky's falling, the world's burning. Oh my God, everything, the worst possible thing could happen. Well, one way to deal with stress and anxiety is tell yourself, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
Let's say tomorrow you lost your job. Okay, that's probably a really, really bad thing. What's the worst that could happen? Can you accept it? Can you deal with that? And then what do you do to change it?
Very stoic principle right there.
It really kind of is. I mean, it sounds way easier than it really is. That can be catastrophic, life-changing. Holy cow, what do I do with it? But if you realize, okay, the worst thing that can happen in this day is that I may lose my job. Okay. Well, who do I know in the industry? How have I built those relationships? What phone calls could I make? And we become very pragmatic and very intentional about dealing with that one issue. If that's the worst thing, solutions tend to pop up.
Yeah. All right. Well, Russ, we are almost out of time here. Tell me this. If somebody was interested in that Carnegie program, how would they go about reaching out to you or the program itself to check it out?
Probably the easiest way is, always look me up on LinkedIn. The other way is Dale Carnegie of North Texas. Go to the website. All the classes are listed there, all the programs. You can enroll right there. One of the sales consultants can reach out to you if you have any questions. What does this do? Or, hey, I'm looking for this employee to kind of learn this skill set. Would this be a right fit? That's the easiest and best way to do it. Yeah, we've got multiple programs available. The Dale Carnegie program that I facilitate is that 8-week, 5 pillars of success. We also do leadership training for managers. So if you've got new managers, you've got other people that are trying to upskill how to lead and inspire people, there's that program. We also have high impact presentations. So if you're, in front of a camera or a mic ever, and you want to be, how do I present better? What if at my company, I've got to present to the board or to shareholders, or I've got to present my
the big mean commercial banker.
Yeah. I got to present this idea to a group of, 500 people. How do you do that? So that's a 2-day course, video intense. You're videotaped 7 times. You're coached immediately right on the spot. And the change, that transformation in 2 days is just...
That's really cool.
Yeah. So lots of stuff.
Last question.
Yes.
3 favorite books, and you cannot have any Dale Carnegie books in there.
Okay. 3 favorite books.
3 favorite books. Fiction, nonfiction.
Oh.
I know you're a big Stephen King guy. So I expect
Stephen
one of them
King.
to be in there at least.
So Stephen King, It.
Okay.
Probably my favorite from his. It's unbelievably scary. Loved that. The Rose Code. And I'm drawing a blank on the author, and I feel bad about that, but it's a story about the women that were serving in London trying to break the Enigma machine during World War II. It's historical fiction, but with a lot of truth kind of weaved into that. It's fascinating. I love World War II history and just learning about how people did those things and how we came up with creative solutions. Just really kind of blew me away. And then probably Lightning by Dean Koontz.
Okay.
I'm kind of in that horror, scary kind of stuff. Lightning talks about time travel and different kind of things, and I just find that stuff fascinating. So
awesome. Well, Russ, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And for all of you listening, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Driven Crowd podcast, and we'll see you next time.